We did not have our personal car. We had all of our bags and equipment and supplies in our hand. We had to carry these things. Youngest son and I are extremely close. And so to have my buddy now not live with me, it was just heartbreaking, and I had already cried. Don't be tough on yourself that even though some things may be positive and seem positive and good, they can still be stressful. Hey, Bookaholics, what's going on? I hope you had a wonderful week. And I just wanted to get on and just share some stuff about my life, about one of my recent weeks. Usually in the summer, I take a break and I don't do any recordings. My podcast slash YouTube channel from recording and interviewing and doing the research for my channel. So last year we went to Europe and Africa. So we spent about a month overseas. We traveled extensively. This year, this summer, we knew we weren't going to take a global trip like that, but we knew a couple of things: that our youngest son would be going to college this year. The time frame cut it out a little bit for really an extreme trip. So a lot of things was going on with our business, like we were adding on new products, just new services and this type of thing. So it just made the summer really a short time frame this year, if that makes any sense. So though, we still made our annual trek to Martha's Vineyard for 2 weeks. So we went up there, but I will tell you, the stresses and strains. And so what I want you to take in is that even though all the things I'm going to tell you are very good things, they can still take a mental health toll. So because my son volunteers for a film festival on Martha's Vineyard, and he has for the past 3 years, we don't hop on a plane with all of that equipment and take it to the film festival. And if you've ever been to Martha's Vineyard or been to an island kind of like that, and you're taking a lot of suitcases and equipment, there's a lot to go through to get there. So you either would have to fly in to Logan Airport in Boston and then maybe rent a car, or there's a bus that goes to Martha's Vineyard from there, and then you have to get on a ferry. So that's like 3 different things, and you're hauling a whole bunch of equipment. So to say all that, we drive. With that said, my husband is originally from the north, so we packed a car full of not only my son's equipment, but all of our luggage and other supplies that will last us in the house that we rent for 2 weeks. It's a lot of stuff. And so it was 3 of us heading up there. But because my husband's from the north, then he wants to stop and visit different people, which is fine because to some degree, because it breaks up the trip. What is it? And maybe it's about 12 hours from our home here in the Carolinas. You just want to take it easy and go up there as smoothly as you can. Thank goodness we have a route where we don't have to get on I-85 or I-95. We take this quote unquote secret route and wind our way to up north. That said, we broke it up. I think we stopped our first night in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and then we stopped in Danbury, Connecticut. And so we stayed at a friend's house that night. And so before we got there, we had been talking for weeks about staying overnight at the house and this and that. And I know Gregory had some heavy discussions he wanted to do with one of the folks that went on the trip. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope we won't be uncomfortable. So, I had that on my mind. But it was a wonderful trip. Some other friends came over and we all had a wonderful time. Lovely food, great company, fantastic drinks. It was a wonderful visit. So then the next day, it was towards the end of our trip, we drive up to Woods Hole, which is in Massachusetts, and we get on the ferry there. And that's one of the ferries you can take over to Martha's Vineyard. So, of course, once we get to Martha's Vineyard, we've rented this house, our third year renting this house, so we know exactly where it's at. We know exactly what to expect. So we get there, we quickly unpack because, again, we're familiar with the house. We unpack all of our clothes, we unpack all the food and other supplies that we bring. We're set. And so for a week, me and my husband and son, youngest son, we have a nice, wonderful time on Martha's Vineyard, and we're just kind of by ourselves. The next week, though, we did add on our oldest son. He came and had a wonderful vacation with his family, as well as my brother and sister-in-law, who are great travel companions. And so we were glad to have all of them there. And this was also the week now of the film festival, which my youngest son, volunteers for. So, but anyway, it was a great trip. We all had a wonderful time. We probably would have had an even better time had it not rained so much. This was the week of Hurricane Debbie, and she was making her way up the East Coast. So, but it is what it is. But Martha's Vineyard is such a wonderful and lovely place. Nothing can really spoil Martha's Vineyard. Okay, so after that lovely time, we had to do something a little bit offbeat. First of all, we rent the house from like Saturday to Saturday. We had to cut the trip short because going back, we had several stops to make. So we had to leave early on Friday, August the 9th. But on August the 8th, which was that Thursday, my husband and I had to take the ferry, get our car, get on the ferry, take the car to the mainland and park it. That was the only space we could get our ferry ticket. Okay, so the ticket that we had for Saturday, we couldn't use anymore. We had to buy a new ferry ticket for the car and ourselves. And so that the earliest date for that was Thursday. So we had to do that. Now the ferry ride is 45 minutes or so, but let's just round that off to an hour. Then we had to park at the furthest parking lot because the first parking lot was full. So you spend another, it seems like almost 30 minutes to go out to that parking lot. Park the car, we take a shuttle back to Woods Hole, and then we get on the next ferry. All of this takes a lot of time, like 45 minutes. And then, of course, you got to get on the ferry for another 45 minutes. Once we get off the ferry, we go to rent a car. And, again, this is an island. It's not the mainland, so renting a car is not that easy. We went to like 3 different locations and nobody had a car. We finally found a guy who had a car. So after all that stressful going to the mainland, parking the car, driving, getting on the ferry again, coming back over, then to jump off the ferry and look for a car rental, it was nerve-wracking. So, but anyway, we found a car, and then so that secured the fact that we would have a car for another 24 hours or so. And we needed that because that night my son was scheduled to go on a photo and video shoot for the film festival, and again he needed to take his equipment. Luckily he took his brother to that event that night, and they were able to do that with the rental car. Now it's still that Thursday. Well, because we have to leave early Friday, we're packing up. Make sure the house is clean, even though they're going to have cleaning people come. We had to pack all our clothes, all our supplies, and do that. We had to wake up extra early, which nobody in my family is an extra early wake up person. We are not those people. So I think we had to, leave at 6 a.m., I believe. My husband drops us off at the ferry location. He takes the car and returns it to the car rental place. While we're waiting for him, I have to go buy our individual ferry tickets. I go in there, horrible customer service. It was just terrible, and so I'm not even going to go into that. But that's, stressful. So now, though, because we had to drop off our rental car and we did not have our personal car, we had all of our bags and equipment and supplies in our hand. We had to carry these things. So that's a drag. The bags are heavy. It's a nightmare. But we were smart enough that the majority of the stuff was in the car with us when we took it over to the mainland. So we were glad about that. By the way, we're standing in the wrong line as people are boarding. And so we have been standing there since like 7 o'clock. And then we end up being a little further behind because this guy fails to tell us he's just standing there, but he sees all these like 100 people standing behind him. And then he finally tells us, "Oh, I'm not in line." Okay, so anyway, we get on the ferry, take that 45-minute ride back, then take that almost sort of 30-minute ride to the parking lot. We get in our vehicle, yay, but guess what? My sons, we got so much luggage in the car because remember, 3 of us came up in the SUV, but now we've added my oldest son who flew in and his luggage and things. So they had to sit together for another like 2 to 3 hours until we got back to Connecticut. And so, they're all scrunched together, but they did it. We get to lunch to visit my father-in-law. And so we talk with him, and then we go to lunch, and some other folks join us, and we have a great time. Again, you're thinking this event might be stressful. He's an older person. You never know. But everything ended up working out really well. We had another great time. So our friends that joined us for lunch was able to take my oldest son back to the Hartford airport. He flies out from Hartford to LA. And my husband and I and our youngest son, we continue our trek down the highway headed towards home. But again, Debbie is still fooling around. Okay, and so it's raining, it's terrible rain, unfamiliar roads. And so we just simply only drive like an hour and a half from my father-in-law back to Danbury, Connecticut, because it's raining too bad for us to make any more driving, on a dark, rainy Friday night. And it was getting ready to be, Friday night traffic. So we decided to stop in Danbury. But with that decision, the next day, we had to realize that we had to drive at least 10 hours to get to Greensboro, North Carolina, to my husband's family reunion. So we wake up again early, not quite as early as before, but we make the 10-hour trek to Greensboro. And mind you, this is a family reunion, a family he's never met before. He's talked to some of these people, or one person, and that person seemed very nice, but you never know what you're going to get. You're going to walk into a complete stranger family reunion, folks you don't know. So, but anyway, because we had to drive 10 hours, I think the family reunion started at 2. We didn't get there until, say, like 9 or 9:30 because we had to drive from Danbury. Because once we got into Greensboro, it was like, hey, definitely let's freshen up and look really good before we go to this family reunion of perfect strangers. So we got there, but luckily, that could have gone really wrong. You never know what you were going to step into. But the people were great. They were really wonderful. I really enjoyed them. And we had a good time. The next morning, we see some of them. They're staying in the same hotel as we are. We take pictures and we say goodbye and hope to see them again soon at the next reunion. And everything's going swimmingly. And then we only have an hour and a half drive back to our home. So it was like, whew, thank goodness. That hour and a half seemed like 30 hours to me. It just seemed like my husband was driving so slow down the highway. And it was like, when are we going to get home? And then he and my son, they got into it, and it was like, oh my God, when are we getting home? But we finally got home. But because my youngest son was going to college that Tuesday, now it's Sunday, that Tuesday, I was like, everybody, we got to completely unpack because we've got to pack for our youngest son to go to school for the first time, to go off to college. Okay. So we did that. All right. That Monday, my son and I, we had to go shop. So we went to Target's and we shopped for all the necessary things we thought he would need for his dorm room. So that starting from scratch type of shopping took like an hour, hour and a half. Okay, so we did that. We got him all, then he came back. He had to pack his clothes and all of this stuff. And, we got that stuff together. Next day, that Tuesday, we drive to Asheville, North Carolina. It's 2 hours away. And we get into the whole, not orientation, but, people unloading their kids and dropping them off to school. So we go to his dorm and we help him unpack and we help him straighten up and fix his room, at least to the minimum degree. Then later on that evening, when we did all of that and had dinner with him and hugged and kissed him goodbye, we drove back the 2 hours to our town. Mind you, while we were driving back, I had to attend a meeting on my phone. So I had to do that and talk about projects and things for a group that I belong to. So next day, it was like, wow, so now it's Wednesday. You guys, I can't tell you. I tell you all this long, long, long story so that you can get into my head of where I was doing and where I've been. I think I was just on a whole mental health collapse. I was so tired. I was so extremely tired. I was so emotionally wrung out that I just thought, I can't do it anymore, And my youngest son and I are extremely close. And so to have my buddy now not live with me, it was just heartbreaking, And I had already cried. I already cried enough. I didn't cry the day we dropped him off, but I did leave him a letter. And so that weighed on my mind a great deal. All the traveling and driving weighed on my mind. All the encounters, not knowing what would happen with these different encounters, all of that weighed on my mind. So as you can see, even though I was traveling, meeting people, meeting friends and family, going on vacation, spending time with my sons and my husband, it was still a very stressful event. So sometimes even the best of things can be stressful. And I will tell you, I haven't been stretched like that ever in my life. Well, let me go back. Both of my parents are deceased, so I do remember the grieving process is really hard, of course. It's very hard. But outside of death, I would say this trip, this whole vacation and the packing and the driving and the traveling and the encounters and all of this, it was extremely stressful. And I really was not myself for a good week. I will say I am coming out of it because my son is happy and healthy and feels safe and seen at his college. So I'm very grateful for that. And I know he's learning not just books, but learning about himself and other people. So I'm glad about that. In the backseat of everything, I'm so glad all the encounters turned out to be very positive. I've already discussed with my husband some of the how we travel will definitely change. The next time, we're not going to do all these stops and encounters. We're just going to have to get from point A to point B, and that's it. And then do those other encounters on another, just specifically for those encounters. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share, we have a mental health playlist here on the Bookaholic podcast. And these are things, don't be tough on yourself that even though some things may be positive and seem positive and good, they can still be stressful. So still give yourself permission to say, hey, this was all well and good, but it's stressful. So that's all I wanted to share with you. And go easy on yourself and keep listening to the Bookaholic podcast, because I will always have some of our podcasts will be geared to folks who've written books about mental health. Okay. Try to have a good week. Breathe a sigh of relief. Pray, meditate. Talk to you in the next one.